Turkey's army is on Syrian soil right next to Israel. This is a worrying development from the north. I'm Yair Pinto, and welcome to Boots on the Ground live version with the headlines that slipped through our fingers this week. So much is happening in the Middle East, so let's dive into this week's hot topics. Erdogan warms his engines as Turkey takes over a strategic base in Syria. Tensions between Turkey and Israel have intensified since the start of the war on October 7th, and the collapse of the Assad's government and Turkey's rise as a dominant force in Syria have further worried Israel, which now sees Ankara, Turkey, as a bigger potential threat in the region than Iran. In Ankara, they plan to deploy air defensive systems at the T4 military airport, including to enforce forces on the ground, which will help in the fight against Daesh, the Islamic State, and also deter Israel from strikes around the city of Tadmor. Israel clarifies, "We will not allow this." And another alarming development is taking place in the south. Israel is concerned about Egypt's dramatic move, and recently Israel has identified a troubling trend from Egypt, which continues to build up military in the Sinai Peninsula. Israel will not accept that situation either. Let's clarify what's happening with Hezbollah. New details about the deadly attack planned by Hezbollah have emerged. The elimination of a senior Hezbollah figure exposes an extensive terror network targeting Israelis and Israel, and also worldwide ahead of the spring holidays. The National Security Council in Israel published heightened warnings and warns of activity by Iran, Hamas, and the Islamic State, ISIS, in dozens of countries, and now it's revealed the results of the Israeli strike in Lebanon. Building on the verge of collapse and crushed vehicles, the destruction from the IDF attack in Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. The Israeli Air Force struck a Hezbollah operative who guided Hamas terrorists to carry out attacks against Israelis. So the top floors of the building collapsed completely, and extensive damage was caused in that area. Residents returned to their destroyed homes to collect belongings. Now, let's move on to a situation update from the Gaza Strip, closer to the center of Israel. Sophisticated steps ahead of a major maneuver, and any senior figure who doesn't surround himself with hostages is basically being eliminated, and the pressure on the Palestinian street is growing. But what are the Shin Bet and the IDF preparing for? When will Hamas begin the starvation campaign against his own people? And what is the likelihood that protests will get out of control and sweep up the masses in Gaza? I'm talking about Palestinians. So today, we will discuss all the details, unexpected developments in the Gaza Strip in this war between Israel and Hamas. So we have a lot ahead of us in this report, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground live with the headlines that slipped through our fingers this week. I'm reporting on what is happening in Israel on day 555 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the militias in Syria, the Iraqi militia, and terror organizations in Judea and Samaria. All of them are taking their orders from Iran's Revolutionary Guards, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And just 1 second before we begin, give us a super thank you, because every dollar of yours will be invested in spreading the truth. And we need your help. So really, every financial donation gives meaning to our work and enables us to continue and create more videos just like this one. So thank you. And please don't forget to click that subscribe button so that you remain tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Our vision in TBN Israel is to share the truth and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So let's start with the Gaza Strip. The Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, divides his time regarding the Gaza Strip into two efforts. He's applying precise pressure on Hamas to move the organization's leadership back to negotiations through smart military actions, and the General Staff and the Southern Command's preparations for the large and powerful maneuver that is planned in case the chance for negotiations will collapse. The Shin Bet personnel are working around the clock to locate terror organizations and operatives of Hamas for targeted assassinations. Anyone who does not surround himself with hostages and sticks his head out is basically eliminated. According to military sources, Hamas's operatives have taken off their uniforms and are moving around in civilian clothes. They are carefully avoiding exposure to unmanned aircrafts and staying away from crowded places. All this is in addition to the Shin Bet's effort under the explicit instruction of Shin Bet Director Ronen Bar to locate and eliminate anyone who crossed the border on October 7 and took any part in the terrorists and not Israel. They are starving their own people. So political sources claim that even if the United States supports Israel's policy of closing the crossings and enforcing the humanitarian blockade, it is unclear how this policy would fare in global public opinion, particularly in Europe, Egypt, Qatar, and also the Abraham Accord countries. It's important to understand that the main part of the plan is to seize significant areas in the Gaza Strip that will become security zones under IDF control, evacuate the residents, and further halt humanitarian aid. We will likely see IDF forces advancing after giving residents a warning to evacuate. And in the southern sector of the Gaza Strip, the IDF plans to significantly expand its control beyond the well-known Philadelphia corridor bordering Gaza and Egypt. And at the same time, the forces will operate intensively from the air and from the ground, carrying out softening actions to reduce the risk to IDF personnel. And in addition, these actions are intended to ensure that no Israeli hostage remain in those areas. Apart from this, the IDF will expand the security zone. The operation will not require a special mobilization of reservists beyond those that was planned in advance and already are stationed on the border with Gaza or in different locations. This is the peak of the military pressure on Hamas just before a broad ground incursion. This is according to a senior security source, and Hamas is taking a significant hit here. The goal of the operation, as outlined by Israel, is to secure the release of the hostages. The Israeli action will help President Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, advance his plan. So if Hamas agrees to a deal, we can go back, increasing the chance of a deal by Passover. If there is a deal, it's also reversible, so Israel can also go into an active fighting mode. In Israel, officials emphasize that Hamas is working with Iran to renew weapons smuggling routes through Africa. Therefore, Israel insists on maintaining a buffer zone to protect communities near the Gaza border. The assessment in Israel is that Hamas will not agree to release all the hostages. So, with the renewal of the ceasefire, the group, Hamas, demands freeing 11 of the hostages. There is an opportunity here, and it must not be missed. We're maximizing the military pressure, and this is a disaster for Hamas. If there is a deal, it will happen precisely because of this pressure. This is according to the security source. So regarding the voluntary immigration plan from the Gaza Strip, surveys conducted at Israel's initiative indicate that, guess what? 40% of Gaza's residents want to leave Gaza for a third country, and I don't blame them. And 90% of Gaza academics want to leave Gaza. Well, that's a smart move to make, for sure. And Prime Minister Netanyahu is leading efforts through the Mossad to find countries that are willing to absorb the Palestinians. A security official said that there are serious discussions with third-party countries to actually absorb all these Palestinians. So we will continue to report on every development in this matter. So guys, keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us It's very important that you support us in every possible way. If it's talking to your neighbors, if it's sending this link to somebody that wants to know what's happening here in Israel, or if it's by donating and clicking the donate button on YouTube, or going to our website at tbnisrael.com/give. Okay? So we at TBN Israel bring you daily reports on what's happening in Israel, because we want you to pray for the situation after you know what's happening here on the ground. Guys, if you have any ways that you think that you can help us share the truth, other than what I just mentioned, please write them in the comments and help us. This is not just our war. Everything that happens in the Middle East also goes to Europe and then also to the United States. This involves all of us. Hamas and all these terrorist groups, they don't just want to attack Israel. They want to destroy all of Western civilization, because this is a spiritual war. So we need to unite in sharing the truth and in praying. Let's get back to the news. The Hamas terrorist organization announced that Israel used the ceasefire to update its target bank with intelligence and advanced technology. This is very, very interesting. Hamas claims that Israel employed drones, eavesdropping, and artificial intelligence during the ceasefire to gather intelligence and update its target bank, leading to precise elimination of senior leaders and commanders inside the Gaza Strip. So against the backdrop of targeted assassinations of senior Hamas members since the fighting resumes, sources in the organization estimate that Israel exploited the recent ceasefire to intensify its intelligence efforts, and according to them, there was extensive use of AI-equipped drones, regional eavesdropping, and voice identification of wanted individuals in Gaza. Pretty cool, huh? It was also reported that Israeli drones scattered tiny spying devices, placing cameras and surveillance equipment during the IDF's ground operations. And Hamas claims that some of the equipment has not yet been discovered. And in addition, Hamas military ceremonies held, during the handover of hostages that Hamas used and built these stages when they released the Palestinian prisoners for the Israeli hostages. In these ceremonies, Israel located fighters and senior commanders, some of whom were later eliminated. These details were published by the Meir Amit Intelligence and Terrorism Information Center in Israel. This is very interesting. Do you think this is science fiction, or do you really think that Israel has spying worms and other surveillance equipment that Hamas is afraid that we are using against them? What do you think? Please let me know in the comments. And so according to sources in Hamas, the organization and other factions lost a large part of their command and control tunnels. These tunnels served as hideouts for senior figures, and as a result, some had to live in tents amongst the displaced or return to their homes where they were killed along with their families. Others were eliminated in safe houses, and meanwhile, the Hamas Ministry of Health has updated that since the resumption of fighting on March 18, 2025, 1,042 residents have been killed and another 2,542 were wounded. This is just since the resumption of the fighting in March 18, and since the beginning of the war in October 2023, Hamas claims the death toll stands at 50,399, with 114,583 that are wounded. Okay, this is according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health in the Gaza Strip, which is, by the way, controlled by the Hamas terrorist organization. So I don't know how these information are really, trusted or trustworthy. This is the problem with Gaza. Hamas is in charge of everything, so how can you trust a murderous terrorist organization to give you accurate numbers? The Palestinian Civil Defense Mechanism in the Gaza Strip accused Israel of execution, so-called, of 6 of its members and 9 Palestinian Red Crescent workers, whose bodies were found buried in the Tel El Sultan neighborhood of Rafah. This is the city in the south that is bordering between Gaza and Egypt. Hamas called this serious war crime and demanded the establishment of an international investigation committee under the auspices of the United Nations and the Red Cross. And in addition, it was reported that Hamas set up revolutionary courts to trial collaborators that were arrested following the assassinations of senior figures of Hamas by Israel. Some of them were executed on charges of espionage, others remained under investigation. And the organization did not specify how many were sentenced to death, but emphasized that it is a step to enhance security following the severe blow to Hamas's senior ranks. So guys, this is the situation in Gaza. I want to hear from you if you trust this terrorist organization that is executing its own people because it fears of spies that are supporting Israel. Do you think that we should even deal with them? That the United Nations should start opening investigations because a terrorist group told them to? Let me know what you think in the comments. This is a very, very weird situation. I want to hear what you think about it. And by the way, just this week, we sent our reporter, Mati Shoshani, to an Israeli Air Force base for an exclusive interview with a fighter pilot who since October 7th has been on non-stop combat missions. So stay tuned to our TBN Israel YouTube channel and please click that subscribe button so you'd never miss anything cool that we upload there and any news from Israel. Now, we want to move on to Turkey. And before we do that, I want to see a big wave of hearts and likes. Can you do that for me? Can you please show some love to us here in Israel? Give us those clicks and click the like button. It really, really helps us to see your involvement in this video in supporting Israel. And I want to hear your opinion. Thank you so much. So now we move on to Turkey. Turkey's army on Syrian soil is actually, on the border with Israel. That's what they want. Not so close at this moment, but this can be the future. This is a very worrying development from the north. Tensions between Turkey and Israel has intensified since the start of this war. And the collapse of the Assad government and Turkey's rise as a dominant force in Syria have further worried Israel, which now considers Ankara a bigger potential threat in the region than Iran. Turkey has begun efforts to take over the Tayas Air Force Base in Syria. This is a base that is also known as T4, maybe you heard about it, and plans to deploy air defensive systems in this base. According to the British news site Middle East Eye, that cites sources familiar with the details, reports indicate that Ankara has already begun planning construction at the strategic site. And since the fall of Bashar al-Assad's government in December, Turkey has been negotiating with Syria on a defensive agreement. The agreement will allow Turkey to provide air defense and military support to the new Syrian government, which currently lacks a functioning military force. Although Turkish officials previously downplayed the likelihood of a military presence in Syria and described such plans as too early, but negotiations have actually continued quietly behind the scenes. And a source familiar with the matter said that Turkey has begun taking action to seize the T4 Air Force Base that is located near the city of Tadmor, also known as Palmyra, in central Syria. A Ishar-type air defensive system will be deployed at T4 to provide aerial protection. This is according to the source. After installing the system, the base will undergo revolution and expansion with the necessary facilities. And Ankara also plans to deploy surveillance and armed UAVs, including those with expanded strike capabilities. The source added that the base will help Turkey establish air control in the region and support its efforts to fight the Islamic State, also known as ISIS, which still operates cells in the Syrian desert. Did you know that? Ultimately, Ankara's goal is to create a multi-layered air defensive system at the base and its vicinity with short, medium, and long-range defensive capabilities against various threats from fighter jets to drones and missiles. A second source noted that the presence of Turkish air defense systems and drones could deter Israel from launching airstrikes in that area. This is a very, very big problem for Israel. So the first source also revealed that Ankara is considering the temporary deployment of S-400 air defensive systems to T4 or Palmyra to secure the airspace during the reconstruction efforts. These are advanced Russian anti-aircraft defensive systems. However, no final decision has been made so far, and Russia would need to grant its approval. The Turkish Defense Ministry did not respond to the reports, and Israel has regularly attacked military installations in Syria since the Assad's government collapsed in December, with activity around the T4 increasing recently. Israel attacked multiple times in this base. Just last week, the Israeli Air Force attacked the T4 base and the Palmyra Air Force Base and targeted runways and strategic assets in that location. An Israeli security source told the media on Monday that any Turkish base in Syria would harm Israel's freedom of action. This is a potential threat that we oppose. This is according to the source. We attacked T4 recently to send a message. We will not allow any threat to our operational freedom in the air. This is the Israeli security source adding. And tension between Turkey and Israel has intensified since the start of this war, ending a short period of reconciliation between the two countries. The collapse of Assad's government and Turkey's rise as a dominant force in Syria have further concerned Israel, which now considers Ankara a bigger potential threat in the region than Iran. Sanctions were imposed on Turkey following the purchase of the Russian S-400 system, which led to Turkey's removal from the F-35 fighter jets program in 2019. And in a phone call last month, United States President Donald Trump and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan discussed possible ways to bring Turkey back into the program. According to American law, Turkey must give up the S-400 system to reinstate it into the program. Turkish officials proposed deactivating the system by dismantling and storing it, or possibly transferring it to a Turkish-controlled base outside of Turkey. However, Israel strongly opposes any move that would give Ankara access to the F-35 jets, arguing that it would harm Israel's militarily qualitative edge in this region. So what do you think about Turkey? Should Israel be worried? Should we trust them? Let me know in the comments. I don't know if this is really a threat that Israel should be worried about like Iran, or do they have other plans in mind? Okay, I'm talking about Turkey. Let me know what you think. Okay. So, of course, we will continue to report on any development regarding Turkey. And now, we'll move quickly to Syria. In the Syrian sector, Israel is concerned about increased territory that is under the control of terrorists, and they are acting, including, I'm talking about Hamas terrorists that are originating from Syria and from Lebanon, and Israel has conveyed warning messages to Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara, also known as Abu Muhammad al-Julani, stating that if he allows the terror organizations to operate against Israel from his territory, he will be harmed. A security source said that after Bashar al-Assad's after Bashar al-Assad imprisoned the Palestinians, so I had to remember the correct word. So after basically he put them in prison, okay, al-Shara or al-Julani released them, and he released also Hamas members and also Islamic Jihad into Syria. He released all their leaders from prisons, and they are organizing to act against Israel, of course. and they possess weapons as well. So Israel established a security zone in Syria that includes 9 bases. This zone extends 15 kilometers from the border, plus an area of influence covering about 1 million people up to 65 kilometers into the Syrian territory. A security source said that Israel has full backing from President Donald Trump to operate inside Syria. This is good. Israel is very concerned about Turkey's increasing control in Syria, and as I said, the Turks want to use the T4 base in the country, and from Israel's perspective, this poses a serious problem. The assessment at Israel is that funding for the base's construction will come not only from Turkey, but also from other countries linked to the Muslim Brotherhood, that is linked to Hamas and to other terrorist organizations that Israel fights. Currently, Syria's skies are open to Israel, and Jerusalem has no interest in friction with Turkey. By the way, I told you that Israel already bombed the T4 base several times already. But regarding al-Julani, a security source said that he is a classic Islamist. He has a short-term and a long-term plan and goal. In the long term, his goals haven't changed. He is the enemy of Israel. He's working to remove sanctions on Syria, and Erdogan is mediating in this matter. Without lifting the sanctions, he'll face what happened to Assad. Basically, as a result of Israeli activity, Syria has been paralyzed. So concerning Turkey, the security source added, there is dialogue. We have no interest in kinetic conflict with Turkey. In the coming days, you will hear about the strengthening alliance between Israel and Greece in the face of development in Turkey. So I'm curious, what do you think about al-Julani? Let me know. Do you think he's a good guy? Should we be worried? Let me remind you, he was part of Al-Qaeda not long ago, and he was part of an offshoot of the Islamic State, ISIS, and now he's presenting himself as the leader of the Free Syrian Army. I want to hear, let me know in the comments, what do you know and what do you think Israel should do regarding this al-Julani guy? Okay? I'm curious. So, this is another area that Israel is facing at the moment. Lots of stuff that is happening, multiple fronts, multiple areas, big updates. Talking about Lebanon. Okay? This is a quote. If there isn't quiet in the Galilee in northern Israel, the rooftops of Dahya in Beirut will shake. Regarding Lebanon, the IDF is currently positioned at 5 points along the border. A security source says that Israel's enforcement policy towards Hezbollah is uncompromising. Israel has effectively established a security zone that provides significant protection to local communities. In Friday's strike on a building in Dahya, Israel severely damaged Hezbollah's capabilities, demolishing that structure. And according to a security source, it is a turning point because it conveys a clear message that the Lebanese government is responsible. And Deputy Witkoff Envoy for Lebanon Affairs from the United States, Morgan Ortagus, responded strongly, accusing the Lebanese government. A security source said that a message to the Lebanese government stated, "You don't have an exemption, and you are responsible for what happens in Lebanon." The source added, "If there isn't quiet in the Galilee in Israel, then the rooftops of Dahya in Beirut will shake." Israel does not aim to eliminate Hezbollah in Lebanon, but it acts without hesitation against any threat and the transfer of weapons. The security source also said that at the moment Hezbollah is significantly deterred, but if the situation changes and the terror organization opens fire, Israel is prepared to strike and, if necessary, renew the war. In a statement published jointly at noon by the IDF spokesperson's unit, the Shin Bet and the Mossad, it was stated, amongst other things, Hassan Badir has recently acted in cooperation with the Hamas terrorist organization, directing Hamas terrorists and assisting them in advancing a severe attack plan against Israeli civilians in the immediate time frame. The attack, which was planned for the immediate time frame was aimed at harming Israeli civilians, and therefore Hassan Badir was targeted immediately to remove the threat. These activities of the Hezbollah terrorist organization constitute a violation of the understandings between Israel and Lebanon and pose a threat to the State of Israel and its citizens. The IDF, the Shin Bet, and the Mossad will continue to act to thwart any danger to the citizens of the State of Israel within the state or outside of its borders. To this statement, one must add another announcement released today by the National Security Council presenting the threat landscape and a motivation of terror organizations to harm Israeli targets around the globe under the title, "Update the Public about Terror Threats Against Israelis Abroad Ahead of the Spring Holidays." The announcement stated, among other things, that the National Security Council is publishing an assessment of the threat to Israelis abroad by terror elements ahead of the spring holidays and summer vacation. This is to increase the Israeli public's awareness of terror threats in different parts of the world. This is a summary of the main trends in the activity of terror elements worldwide which affect the level of threat facing Israelis abroad. The National Security Council announcement notes several influencing factors. Foremost amongst them is the main instigator of global terror. Can you guess? Both directly and via its proxies, targeting Israelis and Jewish communities worldwide, it continues to use terror as a central policy tool as well as for retaliation and revenge in light of harm to senior Iranian officials and senior members of Hezbollah and Hamas as part of the Iron Swords War. I'm talking about Iran. So, in its public statement, the National Security Council reveals some of the operations thwarted by the Mossad and the Shin Bet this past year, and during the year, numerous terror plots directed by Iran were uncovered and thwarted. As part of this, attempts were made to attack Israeli representations abroad in Sweden, in Belgium, and attempts continued by Iranian terror elements to make contact under the guise of business with Israeli citizens in Israel and abroad in order to lure them and facilitate harming or even kidnapping them. So we fight a spiritual war by praying, okay? So please unite in prayer for the situation in Israel and for the peace of Jerusalem. And 1 second before we move on to the next report, it's very important that you continue to spread the truth, share, follow us, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I mean, if you want to support our work, you can click that super like button and donate a few dollars to our operations here so we can create more videos like this one and help sharing the truth. Thanks so much. So, I would like to hear also in the comments, how do you feel and what should we pray for in the situation in Israel? Should we pray for the soldiers? Should we pray for the leaders? Should we pray for what? I just want to hear from you. And then I'll tell you what I felt God wants me to pray for in the past few days. Maybe it will surprise you. So in the past few days, God, I've been feeling that I should pray for the enemies of Israel. And I've been struggling with that. It's very hard to pray for the Houthis after they launch a ballistic missile at you. Or to pray for Hamas after what they did to Israel. Or for Iran. So I've been really praying that God will teach me how to pray for our enemies. And we shouldn't pray for them to succeed in attacking us. We should pray for them to basically receive a revelation of God, of God's love. And then they will start loving Israel as well. That's my prayer for all the enemies of Israel. Okay? So now let's move on to the eastern border of the country, the border with Jordan. This is Israel's the longest defensive line that Israel has. We have peace with Jordan, but Israel's defense ministry will begin building the eastern fence in June initially focusing on areas from which weapons and people have been smuggled from Jordan into Israel. So construction of the fence on the eastern border, which will be 425 kilometers long, is expected to be completed within 3 years at a cost of 5.2 billion shekels. That's, I think, like $2 billion. So the work will start on the critical 170-kilometer segment in the Jordan Valley and the Arava, where most of the weapon smuggling from Jordan took place, with plans to extend it along the entire stretch from Mevo Hama in the northern Golan Heights down to the Ramon Airport near Eilat in Israel's south. In parallel with building the fence, the IDF is preparing to establish drone units that will operate along its route, as well as to recruit reservists on the new Eastern Division. New IDF soldiers to protect that border. And a security source said there is support from both Jordan and the Americans for building the fence, which is intended to stop weapon smuggling from Iran to Judea and Samaria. This is good for Jordan, this is good for Israel, this is good for the United States, and basically good for everybody except Iran and all the terrorist groups in this area. And meanwhile, Defense Minister Israel Katz, who recently visited the Jordan Valley and met with the heads of the councils along the eastern border, instructed the preparations to be made to establish Nachal, an infantry unit called Nachal, river in Hebrew. This is a pioneer combat youth units along the fence to strengthen the security. And at the same time, he instructed that whatever possible, the fence currently inside Israeli territory be moved as close as possible to the border with Jordan. The security source said that what Israel is doing in the refugee camps in Jenin and Tulkarem in Judea and Samaria was not being done since the War of Independence. The IDF instructed the population to evacuate and is forcefully dealing with terror nests using bulldozers to remove explosives. And according to the source, the local population is pleased with the IDF's actions, stating they're throwing flowers at the soldiers. Well, it makes sense that they'll be happy to get rid of the terrorists. He also noted that the IDF is dismantling the terror battalions in that location, and it's no wonder that the number of alerts have dropped significantly. This, according to him, created a significant change. A more offensive operation has taken shape, and the IDF is doing a root canal treatment in the terror nests. And as always, we will continue to bring you the news from every sector where Israel defends itself. So please keep spreading the truth, share, follow us, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. But the most important thing that you can do, and I know I've been saying that a lot, but it works. Prayer works. So keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. And guys, what do you think about building security fences on Israel's borders? You think it will stop terror, or do you think that only boots on the ground soldiers can help? Let me know. Really, really happy to see and hear what you want to say and what you have to say about the situation. Okay, and now to the hottest news that basically slipped under everyone's radar about Iran and beyond. The new alliance of evil axes is exposed. The gift that Iran received from China, an Iranian ship under American sanctions, was spotted in the port of Bandar Abbas after leaving China, suspected of carrying, you ready? Missile components. So if China is indeed assisting Tehran, it could lead to a significant escalation in tensions between Iran and the United States. The Iranian cargo ship Jairan, suspected of carrying missile components, was recently spotted at the port of Bandar Abbas in Iran after leaving China. This was reported on Monday by the American newspaper Newsweek and other Western media outlets. The Maritime Execution magazine noted that the ship, which is under American sanctions, arrived in the country despite ongoing concerns about Iran's missile capabilities. And according to reports in the Financial Times, a link was found between the ship and an Iranian purchase of sodium perchlorate, This is a chemical, I hope I said that correct, used in producing solid rocket fuel. And the transfer of these chemicals to Iran and to its armed forces suggests potential military arrangements. If China is indeed helping Tehran to acquire these materials, it could lead to a significant escalation in tensions between Iran and the United States and its allies in the region, and this is according to the claims of the newspaper. The newspaper also noted that over the weekend, a vessel resembling the Jairan was spotted docked in Bandar Abbas near the strategic Strait of Hormuz, and the ship's dimensions and deck cranes match those of the 16,694-ton Jairan, and tracking data confirms its departure from China. And in addition, Indian media reports that Iranian media reports that last month 4 Iranian missile boats crossed the Strait of Hormuz, connecting the Gulf of Oman in the Indian Ocean to the Persian Gulf under the auspices of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's naval forces. So in this context, it should be noted that last month, official IRGC channels in Iran released footage revealing new missile systems on 3 strategic Gulf islands. The Revolutionary Guard said that the system is capable of reaching targets such as enemy bases, ships, and nearby assets. They also said that Iranians chose to deploy the new weapons on the large and small islands and on Abu Musa Island near the Strait of Hormuz. This is a vital shipping route where the Revolutionary Guards recently conducted military maneuvers. The Jairan is one of 2 Iranian cargo ships mentioned in this context. The other is the Golbon, which has completed a similar journey more than a month ago. And the U.S. Treasury Department imposed sanctions on both ships due to their links to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps of Iran and its shipping lanes, which is accused of aiding weapons smuggling. In response, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei condemned the American position on Monday and threatened that the Zionist entity and the Americans will suffer a hard and powerful blow if they commit to any bad action. A spokesman of the United States Treasury responded saying that both the Jairan and the Golbon remain under sanctions due to their ties to the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is involved in facilitating weapons proliferation. And meanwhile, it was reported yesterday that the prevailing assumption in Israel, the ongoing assumption in Israel, is that the Iranians are vulnerable and under tension due to the weakening of their proxy and their axis, their ring of fire around Israel, and therefore Tehran might decide to attack Israel out of distress and despair. As a result, Israel is preparing for all the possibilities. Security sources also referred to the situation in Judea and Samaria and estimated that by the end of the year, there will be no exit from the camps and no one will enter them either. So we will continue to report on every development regarding Iran, and you should continue praying for the peace of Israel. Please, pray for the peace of our hostages that are held in the Gaza Strip by the hands of Hamas. We want them back in Israel with their loved ones, with their families. Please keep praying for the peace of the IDF soldiers that are defending us on multiple locations in Israel and also outside in Syria and Lebanon and in the skies when Houthis keep flying rockets at us. Please pray for the peace of Israel. And guys, most importantly, don't forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and God will win this war for all of us. Thanks for joining this update. Thanks for sharing the truth. Thanks for standing with me and with the people of Israel. And really, guys, thanks for all your prayers, your comments, your support. They mean the world to me and to all the people of Israel that have been under this war for a very long time. But we know that we're not alone because you are with us. So thank you, and keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel.